What's up, y'all, and welcome into the Jack Vita and Stephanie Mitchell Show.
Yay! Welcome back, friends.
We're back. Deal or No Deal Island, Season 2, Episode 5, Trust Fall recap. We're talking the 5th episode of the 2nd season of Deal or No Deal Island. So much to sink our teeth into today. We've got a fun week here on the program. By the time you guys are hearing this, I imagine my exit interview with the latest contestant eliminated, Miss Maria Grace Cook. That will be out. A lot of interesting stuff to ask her, so you guys aren't going to want to miss that. And then, again, we'll be back next week, of course, with another recap and hopefully an exit interview. Again, we never really can be too sure about these exit interviews, but hey,
Never know.
props to Maria Grace for showing up. Props to Storm for showing up last week. Lots of great content here on this channel, so make sure you guys all subscribe to the Jack Vita Show. And you won't miss out on the stuff that we have going on here. Share it with a friend. Tell your friends about it. We also have a podcast feed. It's on Spotify. It's on Apple Podcasts. There's a little bit of, I think there was a little bit of confusion at the start of the season. I created a separate podcast feed. Used to just have one. So now there's Jack Vita Show Sports, Jack Vita Show Entertainment. That's the one you're looking for if you want all the DONDI coverage and the other reality shows. So make sure you guys all subscribe. We got a lot of good stuff coming up here on the show. Steph, how about that exit interview with Storm last week?
Wow, that was wonderful. Jack, that was such a good conversation. And I can't tell you, I just enjoy how you bring the story out of people and allow them to lay their truth onto the microphone. You were very skilled at that. So I wish people would take a couple notes from you because that was a great interview. And I got to hear so much Storm's backstories. That was awesome.
I thought Storm absolutely knocked it out of the park. He was concise with his answers. We were able to talk about a lot of stuff. He had a lot of really interesting and valuable insights, and he discussed some things that started to come to fruition this week, including we talked about last week. He talked a little bit about the lines in the sand and where things were shaking out, and this is a great point to pick up where we left off last week, which was the big conversation of, did Dickson make a good move? Was it a good move? Was it a bad move? I felt validated after this week's episode, considering the target that he carried on his back.
Yes, I think I was watching that and I was like, okay, all right, Jack got this one. That's fine, but we're going to continue to see how it unfolds. But oh my, what I think this is one of the best episode, action-packed, very unexpected. There was a lot to take in from each protagonist standpoint. I mean, what a ride we were taking on.
Best episode yet of this season. Really, really good episode. Great payoff. A lot of gameplay. You know what's interesting, Steph, and we're going to talk about this over the next hour. So in past weeks, we've kind of talked about who was a standout player, and there's maybe one. There were like 4 or 5 this week that I thought just absolutely killed it, and we'll go one by one and we'll talk about them. But there was some really good gameplay. And just to continue off what we said last week, by the way, I think I was right about that. There's still time for me to be wrong. I'm going to be wrong about other stuff. Steph's going to be right about some things. I'm going to be wrong and right about some things. But what we saw last week was, I think, and Storm even, I think, made a comment about it. So Storm talked about the different coalitions. He said there was a family, which was those 4 of Parvati, David, Dickson, and Maria Grace. And I think Parvati is the head of that snake. I really think that David is kind of going along with the ride. Whatever you want, Miss Parvati, I'm down. I mean, he's got influence, but I think Parvati is leading that alliance. And then you've got this other coalition, which it doesn't sound like what Storm was saying, that Will is firmly in the group at this point, but the group is open to using Will. They see this guy as an asset, somebody that they can use. We saw that in this episode. That group is Lete, it's Seychelle, it's, who else? Lete, Seychelle, Phillip.
Yep, Phillip.
And then we saw CK working with this group, but it doesn't look like she's kind of like in the group, but maybe moving forward there is something here with that. And then we don't really know where La Shell stands. She hasn't been too involved in these strategy conversations, but those were the 2 lines in the sand.
Oh, that's interesting. Yes, and it is. I love the way that's going together. And you correctly identified. Actually, Letty said the exact same thing. She identifies Parvati as the head of the snake. So I see that, and we really are starting to see the development and the real threat that this family is causing. And although this is the first time where we got to directly see some strife in the family, where the relationships really stood, who was expendable. And even on the other side, on the Phillip side, the Seychelle side, the Will side, I believe that they kind of looked at Maria Grace as a potential to be pulled away from Storm, maybe using their connection. So I thought for a while they saw maybe Maria Grace as an asset, but maybe not so much now. She seems more firmly was more firmly in that family side.
R.I.P.
Yeah, gone too soon.
Well, this is why I didn't think it was a great move, is because Will was looking like he wanted to play with Dickson. He's kind of like, okay, you want to play the banker, and he even said, I don't know if I trust this guy. This will be an opportunity to find out if he is someone I can trust, if it's someone I can't trust. He said in the confessional, I want to play the banker. I think that the better move would be to let someone else play the banker and make their target known and make their move and get other people upset. He ends up defying Dr. Will, becomes square in his cross sights. That's exactly who he wants out now. He's like, and he called him out multiple times in this episode, and it was great TV. Dickson, this is why I don't think that this kind of strategy of like, okay, I'm going to work with Parvati and David and they can protect me. The problem is, they might protect you, but they're going to be in the top and they're going to be safe a lot. And when they're safe, who's the other group going to take out? You and Maria Grace.
Right. They're going to pick you. They're going to pick you off. But we'll also see if you have strife in your own family alliance, that's never going to work either. And Maria Grace said a couple of disparaging things in terms of the sibling that she doesn't really get along with. That's not going to work. That's not going to work in the long term. So I think there's a lot of it's still unpredictable. We know that about this show. We really don't know how this will pan out. But I think it's still too early to see how that move last week is going to shape Dickson's game. We saw this week some more interactions between him and Dr. Will to see how their trust relationship, bond, friendship strategy can move forward. And to this week, it cannot. It cannot. He said, none your business. You're not trustworthy.
My sister loves that one. She uses it all the time. So Dickson must not have heard it because he was like, Nunya. He said it a couple times. My sister, whenever it's like, oh, what do you want for dinner tonight? Nunya. Nunya business.
I mean, Dickson fell right into that one. I mean,
he started it too. He's like, hey, can I talk to you?
Yeah,
he walked right into that one.
He called him a weasel, and he wanted some clarity on that, whether to deflect or see what he really meant. And Dickson was trying to get out of that. He did weasel out. He was a weasel in that instance, because in that instance he said he was going to follow through, and he did not.
Now, backing up to this Maria Grace thing with Dickson from last week is, I think what you're kind of getting at is like, why do you even want to really play the game with this group when there's someone that's in the group that you should have no reason to trust and you should be upset with? Like, she's rightfully upset. She just had like her person who was kind of emerging as her number one ally, potential love interest. Dickson sends him home. Terrible thing for her game. And then now this is where it gets a little tricky, because this is stuff that we're going with that wasn't seen on Deal or No Deal Island. This is interviews and press. And I did not see this interview, but Kim texted us and she said that in this Sharon Tharp interview, I'm going to give credit where credit's due. She interviewed Dickson. It was maybe 15, 20 minutes long last week. So I'm certain if people are interested, they can go check that out. Maybe they've gotten more notes on it. But I believe from that interview, he said that David had told him to target Storm. So now you've got Maria Grace, who's falling on the sword for David in the excursion, saying,
Gross.
she said,
Gross.
like, I want to protect you. You're in bad shape. Like, it's like, whatever you need, I think you need this more than I do. And come to find out that David was potentially the one who orchestrated the exit of her love interest.
Yes.
So it's kind of like, what are you doing, Maria Grace? I'll ask her about it today.
You have to ask about it, but David chose correctly. He chose a good daughter who's going to protect her, throw herself out to protect David. Like that is a very silly move. But when somebody, here's the other thing too, when somebody throws themselves in front of some potential danger for you, you may want to consider whether or not that person's expendable, because they've proven themselves in a space of loyalty where it's a very risky thing. So that person could be valuable for the game. But I think David thinks his biggest asset, if he had to choose, is going to be Dickson. So
but even last week he said kind of like, oh, we don't want to lose him yet, right? Like, this is going, I'm very perplexed by the game the family is playing, because it feels a lot like early Survivor, where it's kind of like, we only need 4 people in this tribe of 10.
Numbers.
You need numbers. Now, granted, I'm not saying that it's not going to work for them, because if Parvati and David continue to stay safe, they're going to make it a long way. There is that component where multiple people can be safe, unlike in Survivor, only one person can be safe. And then if it's a tribal game, if your tribe loses, nobody's safe, or your whole tribe can be safe. But this is I'm very perplexed by decisions that are made, comments that are made. Clearly that group has alienated the majority of the people. They're in the minority. At one point, Parvati said in this episode, there's no room for Phillip in this family.
I know. I was floored. It was after a heart-to-heart. Phillip is explaining his backstory and his why. And, they have like a really great moment there in the pavilion under the rain. And 2 seconds later, Parvati's like, yeah, that's all good. But no, he doesn't fit in. And Phillip just talked about like how it was difficult for him to fit in various ways. And at that moment, I was like, Parvati, I fear you're dead to me, friend.
I just don't understand it, because you have 4 people and there are 10 people on this show. How can you not, how does he not fit in? You need at least 2 more numbers to have a majority.
And I think she had the full audacity to say that Phillip doesn't have a mind for strategy. Well, she did say that. He promptly fooled you. He does. Now, he may have together, we'll remember that Phillip and Parvati, as they have been for many other excursions, worked together as a team, which meant that they had to go against each other. Although Phillip came out on the losing side of that and Parv ended up with the higher case, they both lied to each other. So what I'm not going to hear is Parvati tell the tale. She needs to put her thinking cap on and realize that Phillip is to be reckoned with. That man is athletic, he is smart, and he certainly has strategy.
The problem, though, is that they've got 6 people coming for him. So it's not like you can just focus on, all right, well, Phillip's the target. So I think Phillip was in a better position to lie to Parvati than Parvati was to lie to Phillip.
That Phillip was in a better position? Absolutely. I think so.
To lie. If him lying is not, I think it's worse for Parvati, because I think we've really been building this up over the episodes. There's some arc here, and they showed it real early where he said, I don't know if I can trust her, but I'll work with her for a little bit right now. Yep. And now we get this next moment where he's like, this is the first time that she's just flat out lied to me. And we didn't get a confessional from her saying oh, I don't know if I can trust Phillip. Which I'm sure Parvati is aware. She knows that. She's like, he lied to me. I shouldn't trust him.
No, she said, she did say that in one of the interviews. She did say that she can't trust him, outright. I think that was... Okay,
I must have missed that. I thought she said, the only thing I remember her saying was her being like, you lied to me. And he's like, you lied to me too.
Yeah, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. But in a game like this is you want to be able to figure out who you can trust, because you never want someone you don't trust or you haven't built a relationship to be in a position of playing against the banker, because on those who are available, you're getting down at the bottom. That's why I think La Shell, Seychelle even, are doing a great job not really getting in the crosshairs of anyone. So.
Well, okay, let's talk about the social politics here in these groups, because one thing that I find really interesting, this is a stark contrast between the Night Owls and whatever this group wants to call themselves, the Seychelle crew, which we're going to talk about them. I was really impressed with their gameplay this week. But what I think was really interesting is we got some stuff on the show where you guys were targeting Rob. I always felt like it was really a little bit of a stretch to make it look like you guys were just talking crap about them. The worst thing that was said was Dumb and Dumber was Amy, and it was a joke. And but it was pretty much like a lot of it was like, Rob's a good player, let's get him out.
Totally.
We respect him,
Absolutely.
we like him, he's a cool guy, but we cannot let him stay in this game. That is not the kind of commentary I'm hearing from this group. I heard this week Muppet Family, I heard Dweebs, I heard I think it was either this week or last week, it was Creepy Family. There's real animosity between that group and the family.
Yes, there really is. And I think it's bordering on nasty. Now, if people can keep their commentary in the confessional, wonderful. Keep it there. But if that seeps over into their gameplay, I fear that'll start to create even more contentious cracks in the social relationships. And that has potential to be explosive.
I think there's real resentment there, and it's building. And I think you can just tell that this family has rubbed people the wrong way. And it's just I don't know, but it's kind of interesting to me because it's not off brand for how Parvati plays these games. Just go through the history, look at Traders last year. It was her and Dan. She was never really with anybody else. Then it was her and Peter. And then she wasn't really with anybody else. And Phaedra was like, nobody likes you, Parvati. Everyone thinks you're mean. And then on Winners at War, they had an old schoolers alliance, and she targeted Danny and was like, we need to get Danny out, and excluded her. And then it was Rob, Parvati, and she would only hang out with Parvati and Ethan, from what I've been told from sources. So that was another time, and that blew up her game on Winners at War. On Heroes versus Villains, she found the group with Russell and Danielle. They were on the outs. Somehow it worked out for them because they got some idols and a little bit of luck. And then on Micronesia, it was the same type of thing where it was a couples alliance with Ozzy, James, and Amanda. And the only reason why it really worked out was because Fairplay quit. If Fairplay stays there, according to Fairplay, him and Suri are kind of in the middle, and they would have rather played with the Yule and Penner, that whole crew, Amy and Eliza, and that Parvati would have been the first person voted out, according to Johnny Fairplay, in that season. So, Parvati, my tip to you is if you play again, which, again, and by the way, Parvati could win this thing, and she might not end up beating the numbers, but I think that you'd be better off if you tried to find yourself on the good side of the numbers rather than the bad side.
Well, one thing that is amazing about you, Jack, is you will pull from your repertoire of history of how people have played, and you will line up facts, receipts, statistics, and to lay a great foundation to say you understand how they're playing and be able to give insight. It's so hard. That's why it becomes so difficult when we have returning players from other arenas and competitive reality. It makes it really difficult because we're going to automatically see them as a target as a casual viewer, because if we know them, we see and we have a history of how they play, and so that really influences how you feel about them in the game. And that could work for your benefit or not for your benefit if you're in the game, as we saw with Rob and with our winner of season 1, Jordan, where she didn't even know it was a threat. Didn't even know it wasn't a threat. It's like you're in a room with a bumblebee and you're allergic, but you don't know you're allergic and you don't see the bee there. You'll be fine.
Okay, question for you. Going off that, because Rob is a very different player from Parvati, and he has a
Yes.
long history of being really good at building a coalition around him. I'm
Right.
curious if Rob had showed up as Robert from Boston, as some guy who had never been on reality TV before. You had no idea who this guy was.
Mm-hmm.
Does that change the way that people like he's a target because he's Boston Rob, and there are
Period.
facets of his game that frustrate you and
Period.
stuff like that.
Period.
But if he comes in without that target, is he like? Do you think things shake out a little differently, and there's more of like an alliance or a greater alliance around him?
Yes, things. Well, here's the thing: is he's only going to play how he's going to play. So you're saying if I didn't know anything about him and nobody there knew anything about him, he would win the game, and that's just what it is because he's a phenomenal player, and that's just what it is. I stand 10 toes on that. He has a way with corralling himself with people who are in defense and will stand against defense the same way that doggone MJ just did in front of David. Like, you aren't messing with David. And the same way that Claudia did with Boston Rob. He has a way about these games. And that is what makes him a target. Not because he's, a male, not because he is of an age, not because, no, I take people for who they are in the game. And none of those things matter. He's a phenomenal player. He would have obliterated all of the competition before we even realized what was going on. So it's hard to separate. It's hard to separate people's history. Sometimes it's definitely a downside. I mean, Jordan didn't have that, so she was able to, move ahead nicely. Mm-hmm.
It paints a target. So
yeah, sadly.
Continuing off this social politics, we've got this other group with Lete, Seychelle, Phillip. Storm was a part of that group. And then, I can't even remember. It seems like that's really the core of it, with then Will and CK as kind of like, I'm trying to think of the right word. They're like, no, they're like hired guns, basically.
Oh, okay.
But I just want to go through and, for one, before we talk about the gameplay here, because there were a number of people that I was really impressed with, and I want to give flowers to.
Sure.
And we'll go through it one by one. I think it's interesting when you watch Will, and we'll talk about it later, how fun it was to watch him play the banker. You saw the 4 people that were really ticked off by it, and the other group of people, they seem like they kind of enjoyed it. It doesn't seem like, obviously CK was turned off by Will. We'll see if that maybe changes, and maybe he's starting to endear himself to these people. I don't think Will is like, I think Will's come a long way from where he came in just a few weeks ago, where it was like, man, this guy's such a jerk. I think people are starting to appreciate him and that alliance as well.
You might be right, especially with leaving CK moment for Will. And I will just speak briefly on when you're at the Deal or No Deal game, you're in the temple, it is very difficult to like cheer for people and help people along when you know that the moves of however this game shakes out, that if they lose, that can threaten to dismantle all of your alliances. So it's like you want to cheer, but you don't want other people to see you cheering too hard. You want to support your people, but not really, because depending on how the game works out. So it's hard to judge people in that temple or environment. I think people were probably a little more aggravated with the temple game, particularly, I don't know if we could jump into that piece, but particularly with the fake accepting of the deal. I think that probably
we're here now, so we'll dig into it, and we'll get to the standouts in a little bit then. This was first of all, Will playing the banker and just counting was so funny. I found this hilarious. Yeah. He's a troll. This is what he does. He was trolling the whole time. He had some troll remarks. Parvati got really upset. At one point, she said something about, like, you could put more money into the pot, but you won't. And he said, "Oh, I'm sorry. Are you an accountant?"
Okay. I thought it was great. I think it's a girl. I thought it was great strategy. Like, why would you not go in order? It's a game of chance. It's a game of luck. Choosing, I don't know the statistics behind it, but you have great likelihood at the beginning of picking your cases of any other possible outcome. So I thought it was fine. Don't be upset about it that he doesn't have some warm, fuzzy story on, well, number 2 is the house I lived in when my first puppy was born. No, we don't care. Pick a number, so.
Oh, it was hilarious. And, then you get to the point where he just says, okay, deal. And he's trolling everybody. And I know you've got some thoughts on this. Go ahead, Steph.
Well, I mean, I will say that these sort of competitive reality programs, as far as I've been involved in, are very particular with rules. And we have players like Boston Rob and like, I'm going to call him Physician William, that part of their strategy are finding inroads, ways to segue rules to get ahead and whatever that looks like. And so by him taking the fake deal, because I'm going to be honest with you, the rules are the rules. Once you hit that button, but he found an in. He found an in. And what he needs to be is a lawyer, because a lawyer will find you an in and find ways in which you could evaluate a situation from a different perspective, which he was able to find that loophole. Am I mad he found the loophole? No. Good for him that he found the loophole. I think it undermined the production of the program to Will's objective of wanting to, quote unquote, figure out where everyone stands. So I was a little annoyed at that because it is a well thought out program. But again, we had a similar situation season 1 where Rob, there was a problem with the rules in that last excursion, the second to last excursion where Rob was eliminated, where he went over and looked at Amy's board and cheated, so I think from a production standpoint, they really do try to do a good job with rules to make sure you understand them. They're clear. There, is not ambiguity. Everyone is starting from a fair playing field. So my take on that is when he undermined that, some people will be like, oh, that's so really cool. And I guess from a game standpoint, but it undermines the whole thing. So I felt I think I would have been kicked out. If I did some crap like that, they'd be like, sorry, girl. Like, we're not paying you an appearance fee, so you go.
Okay. You know what? If I was Dr. Will, and this is me not saying this as a reporter, this is speculative. If I was Dr. Will and I had this idea, obviously he had thought through that. I would think that if I'm Dr. Will and I'm considering doing that, I'm going to ask a producer, hey, is this how it goes? Just to clarify. If I say no deal, but then I renege on it, then like I'm not out, right? Like I can still, because of this thing, he hasn't asked for a deal or no deal thing. I would think he probably ran that by a producer to get some kind of confirmation, because that's just way too risky to try to force. Yeah.
It is risky, but many times you may do better off finding the ambiguity in the rules. So you risk them providing you clarity that's not in your favor, and then you can't do what you want to do. So it's a risk to do it
yes,
without giving them any heads up. So at first I was like, does he know this? Is this the plan? Is he frustrated? Like, what are we seeing from Physician William? And I think ultimately it was, after reviewing it, I think he found an in. Kudos to him for finding it, because I do have to remind myself that this is a game.
So he ends up going back on it. He says no deal. He ends up taking a great deal, which was, I think it was 100. Oh, I had it written down. I guess I didn't have it written down. It was like 178,000, I want to say.
Okay. I thought it was 186.
That's my memory serves me right. It was a good chunk of change.
Yes.
And it was like a 1 in 3 chance. Oh yeah, it was 168. I do have it here.
Okay.
My dyslexia was making things difficult for me. But it was like a 2 out of 6 that it's going to be. 2 out of 6, it's a bad deal. 4 out of 6, it's a good deal. So really,
Yeah.
it's a 2 in 3 chance. Odds were in his favor. He takes the deal, and then he gets the power, and
Mm-hmm.
they have this conversation earlier about, hey, like, guys, we got to work together. You guys got to put whatever it is that you have in the past, at least for now. And
Mm-hmm.
if we want any shot at winning this game, we can't be shooting at each other. We have to go after the family. They've got
Mm-hmm.
4, and while they may not have a full majority, we're going to help them get a majority if we continue to shoot at each other. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like, whatever that is, let's put it in the past. Let's find a way, work together for this mission here on this one game. And there's an element of, can we trust Dr. Will? But he brought it up. He's like, man, that would be such a terrible move, because not only if I take out CK, now I've got these 3 people that are upset with me. There's the
Mm-hmm.
family. Like, I have nobody to work with.
Correct.
So my first star that I'm giving out, my gold star, Dr. Will, for laying down his gun and working with CK and working on this thing. And I think it was a good move for him, and it ended up being a good move for the alliance.
I ultimately agree. I think I'm glad to see MG gone, because I'm rooting for my particular protagonists, which do not involve members of the family, unfortunately. Um, Only just from a storyline perspective. I'm sure people are interested in seeing them move forward. But from a game point, I think Will doing that solidifies him with a bit of trust with CK. Do I think CK will turn around and absolutely demolish Dr. Will at any given opportunity? Yes. Did he have an option? He always has an option. He always has an option. The only reason Dr. Will is not receiving my gold star this week is for the slight temper tantrum that he portrayed at the excursion, and I was not a fan of that. He, as you guys know, he planned to throw the excursion before even knowing what the excursion is, and I keep telling y'all, this game doesn't work like that. If you think you have a plan, throw your plan out the window. You think you're choosing a teammate as a good thing? Guess what? You could be going against your teammate. It's like the Squid
Yeah.
Games. Like, don't think you know. So the fact that now we've seen him for the last 2 excursions, like me, I'm doing it and you don't even know what it is, backfire on you all the time. And Dickson played your behind immediately. You didn't even get a chance to formulate a plan. You didn't get a chance to psych him out, because don't look at here. I was born at night, but not last night, Dr. Will. Don't tell me you didn't want to psych him out and get yourself a case that was going to save you potentially. Like, that's probably, don't do that. I'm not into
Well,
that story.
the excursion it was an interesting dynamic. It's called Trust Fall. The episode was called
Yes.
that. And you have the option of, if you want to be honest with the person about what case value it is, you can look up, try to get up to level. Your case value has to be higher than if your case value is higher than your opponent's, then you're safe. So Dickson really had that one on a platter, because it was like his case value was higher than Will's on the first one, and Will was honest. If Will, I think that may have been, if you say, like, Dickson played him, the move may have been for him to lie to Dickson. Instead, he was honest with Dickson. Dixon's like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, great, I'm safe. You know,
Mm-hmm.
or if Will wanted to throw this, he wanted to lose, then okay. But yeah, so that's how the mission worked, or the excursion. Sorry, did you
And
have anything else to say on that? Go ahead.
I would say his plan didn't work out. And when you are frustrated and your plan doesn't work out, because mind you guys, each player is on a platform that is being raised across from each other at certain intervals. And the person who pulls the cord first, their opponent falls, and you each secure the case that's on the opposite side in front of you. And so if Dr. Will had wanted to fall and lose on purpose, his plan was to pull the cord and have Dickson fall. And he was upset that he didn't get a chance to do that portion of his plan. And he pulled his cord at the same time as Dickson, leaving them both tumbling from the hammocks in the tree. And so that didn't work out. And sorry for you. Like, you can't be throwing temper tantrums. That's not cute. Like, we love you as a player. We love watching you on TV. Sometimes stuff doesn't go your way. Like, pull it together. In that moment, he was very much showing his physician, William, like a surgeon in the operating room throwing instruments because they're upset. No, get it together, honey. So that's the only reason he doesn't get my star. I love strategy, but pull it together.
Okay. Next person I'd like to give a gold star to, and I'm giving out like 5 this episode.
I love it. Yes.
This could be like in the future. Maybe we could do it like a hockey game. They have the 3 stars of the game. We could have the 3 stars of the episode. We'll work on that. That's your homework for next week. Come up with 3 stars. I didn't plan that now. I'm just thinking of that now. But my next one, CK. I'm going to give you some credit here because I gave, look, last week I was critical of CK. But this program, fair and balanced. We're Fox News over here. We're fair and balanced. But we are that. I think that's a good way to put it. Is like we are not like Steph knows from having herself critiqued last season. There were times where we probably poked fun or laughed and made some jokes, and it was all in good fun. Or we said, "Oh, I don't know if I would have done that," but it was not. We're criticizing the performance, not the performer. There's no agenda behind this or anything like that. We're fair. We're open-minded. We want to, give credit where credit's due.
Absolutely.
And CK, I want to give you credit because I think you did a good job in this episode. You did not allow your vendetta against Will to cloud your judgment. You took, first of all, you were submissive in the excursion, which ended up playing well. I think that could be something that builds trust with this group. You might be able to work with this group moving forward. In the excursion, Seychelle, and we'll get to Seychelle because she's also on this list. Seychelle said, laid it all out. Look, this is what we're doing. This is who we have to target. I've got that case. I need to get that case. And Seychelle didn't end up having the high case value, but it was basically like you're going to be safe. We're not going to mess with you. Can you please just agree to this? And CK went with it. She took the deal. Yes. And then later when they're all talking, it's like, look, are you on board with, not that CK really had any power in this instance, but it's like, can you I guess she did have a little bit of sway here. You have to make Will feel comfortable enough that he's not going to target you now. You have to make him feel like, hey, we can put some of this in the past, at least for now, for a little bit. We can maybe work together on this thing. So CK, I thought you played this episode very well.
I think I can't see it that way. I mean, I think she stayed out of the crosshairs. And so she did a good job at doing that. Because she had many opportunity to not trust that she wasn't going to be, that Will wasn't going to go after her. She had many reasons to believe that Will would be targeting her. She doesn't feel like there's anything honest about him or trustworthy. So in that instance, if I was CK and I'm going against Seychelle and we're going up together, good for her for trusting Seychelle. I feel like it kept them built some trust as well. And Seychelle promises not to take out CK as much to her ability. It doesn't really. The thing is, here, do you take that deal or not? Because are you in control? You don't get to say, because obviously when MG and David went, of course, David's like, yeah, we're going to keep you safe. But do you even have a say? You don't have a say. I'm not taking a deal with nobody is how I would approach it.
Okay. I think that it worked out well for her, and it has a chance to pay dividends in the future because CK came out very strong. She was targeting people. She was playing really bold, especially a couple weeks ago when she goes over to Parvati and is like telling Parvati what to do, and Parvati's like, back off, don't do this. This is a different CK. She's playing a different game here, and she's saying, okay, hey, I'll go along with your plan. I can be a tool in your arsenal. Or a weapon in your arsenal. I think we can work together. I think that this was a good deal. And then she did enough to make Will feel comfortable not to get her out in this point. So I think that she did a good job.
Yeah. And actually now that we have 2 excursions in a row where that occurred.
Yes.
He had
And I
to
thought
deal.
last week I don't think that was a good deal. We talked about that. I
Yeah.
think that this situation was a good deal because Seychelle would have won, and Seychelle was very firm on like, protecting CK after that.
Hmm.
So this is like there could be an alliance that's starting to form here that could extend past this episode. There was a call from Seychelle, and we're going to talk about Seychelle now. She gets a
Hmm.
gold star.
Yes.
She played a really good. This is a really good week. She came as kind of like the edit made it look like she was the unifier that really brought this group together. And she said, "We have to get those dweebs out of here. We cannot let them move forward. We have to get one of them out tonight, and then we're
Yeah.
just gonna take them out one by one." She really, from even before she had that group had power. Um, she was saying at the start of the episode, like, we've got to. She was really okay. This is again why I think Dickson made a bad move. Look
Oh,
how like upset Seychelle and Letty were by that move, because this was like the conversation was like, is he only going
yes.
to tick off Dr. Will? No, no, no. He ticked off like a whole group of people here. So,
Mhm.
Seychelle, from start to finish, she got a lot of confessionals. She voiced her strategy. She had a plan. She executed it, and it looked like she did a good job of bringing people together. And she was able to get CK to take that deal in the excursion as well. So great week for Seychelle.
I agree. No notes on Seychelle this week. I think that was wonderful. She was assertive. She knew what she was going for. I think she did wonderful also.
And then next one, Letty. Letty didn't
Mhm.
play quite as big of a, or at least in the edit. The edit didn't show Letty doing as much dictating or pulling the group together. But she won this excursion. She did a good job. She was with La Shell, and that was a really emotional case
Yeah.
pull.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's just like, a matter of trust. They knew one of them would be on the top. It was really a lot. And it was high up in those trees. Don't get me to talking about that because I do not do heights. I think
So
it
she
was
won
wonderful.
it,
Yeah.
secured the high case value. She had the power.
Yeah, she did.
And she was also on board with this plan, and she's like, "This is what we
Yeah.
got to do." She definitely played a factor in bringing those
Yes.
people together. Obviously, Seychelle got a little more of the screen time on this. It seemed, I think, if we were digging a little deeper, I think Letty probably did a little more than maybe they
Yes.
showed.
Yes. I
But
agree.
she still won the thing. She picked who went up, and she got the
Mhm.
person out that she wanted out. So like that's
There
a
you go.
perfect week right there.
Yeah. That's exactly what I was going to point out. I actually think Letty slid by with some really critical game moves because not only did she identify the head of the snake as Parvati, but she also wanted to lay the groundwork for people to begin to trust her and had a critical conversation with Will. So I'm down for Letty this week. She's doing good work, staying out of the crosshairs, but also laying that groundwork. She's going to need that. Everyone needs that moving forward. This is a game of trust, big time.
Was there anyone else that was a big standout this week? I think those
Mm,
four were the ones that I would really give my flowers to.
yeah, I'm tired of the family too. But so that's sadly nobody from the family will get stars today in terms of their showmanship or game play. More on mom and dad and the I don't know, weird relationship.
Parvati found a second man's lap to sit on this week, so the
Whose lap
counter
was
is
she
up to
sitting
two.
on?
She sat on Philip's lap, so now the counter's up to
That's
two.
true.
Can we make it three next week? We'll see.
Oh, that's so true. I missed that when she went over to console him in his moment of, being vulnerable, where she promptly turned around and was like, yeah, but we don't care about that. So I don't know. She just uses the opportunity to sit on people's lap. You think you're going to get in emotionally, and she turns around and is like, that means nothing. So we'll just take that as it is.
All right, let's see. What else do we have from this week?
Parv also says Dr. Will is an acquired taste. I'll never acquire. I
You like that one?
I love their animosity towards each other.
Yes.
I think it's going to
Yeah.
make for exciting to watch how that unfolds. If Parvati were doing some of the same sort of tactics or working with people who are doing the same sort of tactics as Will, she wouldn't mind it at all. It's just that this doesn't necessarily suit her narrative of her family and those who she has in her brigade, so to speak. So again, I love Parvati as a player. Enjoy watching her on these programs. 0 stars for her today.
Yeah, not a great week for the family, especially just with the amount of confessionals and comments made about, as we ran through it before, dweebs, creepy, Muppets. There were some other comments that were made. The thing that I find really interesting is we're 5 weeks through, and I don't know like who the audience is supposed to root for. Like last season, it was very clear with the edit that like you're supposed to root for Rob. And this season, is it, dare I say, fair and balanced? That's going to be our term of the week. Fair and balanced. I don't know if I'd say it's actually fair and balanced, but I don't feel like we're getting a heavy... I'd say the person who's probably got the most favorable edit that we probably should be rooting for is Phillip. I think Phillip has been like the most likable person, and you know, we got a nice arc of him this week talking about his tough childhood and the inspiration he can be to others. So like I could maybe see a hero winner edit with Phillip, but aside from Phillip, I don't really know who it is that we should necessarily be rooting for, because like you've got the family, which you would think like it's Parvati and David. They've got fan bases built in. They're going to come in and watch the show. They're established names and they get a lot of screen time, but we're getting so much of like, we don't like those guys. But we're also getting a lot of like Dr. Will is a narcissist and he's really annoying. And so it's really interesting because it seems like you've got these 3 returning players, for lack of a better word, and none of them I feel like have been painted in an extremely favorable light. David's probably gotten the most favorable edit, I'd say, I guess, but it hasn't beaten you over the head the way the Rob thing did, where it was like, you know, if you were someone who was watching the show, you were most likely rooting for Rob last season.
That's so true. And also, it's interesting because earlier you asked if we didn't know anything about Rob and came in blindly, how would that affect? How would that affect the outcome? And I will say in the exact same manner is that we don't know anything about David, but now retrospectively, coming from the outside, there's a reason why he's the golden god and so great in Survivors, because when you put people like this in programs, they do extremely well. And so the only other person who has that knowledge is Parvati. Parvati, you know, is the only one armed with how severe of a threat this person is. And sadly, it's in her own alliance. So, because at the end of the day, who's going to play this type of game better, even from a physicality standpoint or even from a social standpoint? One might venture to say it's David. I don't know. I have not watched him play, but it's a big threat. But who are we rooting for? Like, I don't have anyone who's shining through for me yet, although Phillip does, like you said, have a favorable edit. La Shell is like under the radar. And so that's always a good thing, because there's not anyone that dislikes her or is going after her. Those are always helpful things. So if you're rooting for the underdog, you could be rooting for the one who's under the radar, or you could be rooting for one of the bigger players than one of the big names. I don't have anybody yet.
Yeah, I think Dr. Will has become like the protagonist, but is he the villain? Is he the anti-hero? We'll find out, I guess. Because, I mean, he's driving the story. He's the most interesting driving force of the season at this point. But we're getting so much of, like, he's really a narcissist, he's really annoying, he's a troll or whatever from the other side. So it's not like he's being painted in an extremely favorable manner either.
Correct. He's not being painted in a favorable manner. But because you also, and I think I might have spoke on this a couple of weeks ago, but because you see some characteristics in someone as a game player, I think it's a little bit a questionable move to apply any sort of mental health diagnosis to them. So,
Yeah,
you
we
know,
don't like that. Not a fan of that.
love that.
Parvati did call him something else, though, and I think this may have been the Kim Matina tribute. She said that, and it was a 6-letter word, and it was bleeped out, but I
Oh,
paused it. It was 6 letters. I think, if I had to guess, I think it was the same 6-letter word that Kim called Rob and
oh my
Claudia.
goodness. All right. That is great. I wonder if anybody will be very upset about that. Um, I mean, he is in the game. He's a disruptor. He's a disruptor, you know. And so, yeah, I think she's spot on with that. And that's the edit we're seeing. That's the player we're seeing. We are seeing some of Will's admirable qualities. He is getting people to sort of kind of corral around him a little bit, even though they're hesitant to do so. And that just speaks to his ability, I think, to get in, because nobody even had to talk to him. Nobody even had to entertain what he thought or what he wanted, but people were doing that. And he built alliances, even incrementally so, really small, but made moves towards doing what he's really good at, which is creating a solid core group of individuals. So good on him.
Coming back to Maria Grace, I think, if we're answering the question, why did she go out this week? I think she just hitched her wagon to the wrong group of people. Like it's as simple as that. Is like, and again, we're gonna talk with her. We're gonna get her perspective. I'm sure she's a lovely person. I'm looking forward to it. We'll get a lot of valuable insights, and there's so much that we don't see that I love hearing about from the contestants. Storm shined a light on so much last week. But I think that, one thing I'm going to ask her about is like, you identified Parvati at the very beginning and you wanted to work with her. Why was that? Because I think, that ended up leading to her demise because Parvati is the head of the snake that they all want out. And you just keep going further and further down. Well, who's available that we can take out that's in that coalition? And she was the one. I think that's what did her in. Whereas, playing the game with some other people may have served her better.
Yeah, I would agree on that. MG put herself in a position to be expendable. And that's just what it is. Her proximity to the core power is what her demise was. And even though the other half of her very brief showmance was already eliminated, may as well go ahead and just get the rest of it out anyway, because it's of no use. Because if it's a numbers game and you have a showmance and the showmance is split on 2 different camps, unfortunately, that puts them both members of the showmances, which are in a opposite kind of alliance. It puts them in a position to be expended first. So I think it's balanced. I hope they had a good old long time off that island together. And it's she's collateral damage. She's collateral damage.
Her exit press will be interesting because Storm obviously got asked about it a lot, and the answers he gave was kind of like, we visited each other a couple times. I don't know. We'll kind of see. I feel like they may have figured out the way to create the most amount of interest to get, a little bit of, people are going to be Googling, are Storm and MG still together? I think they're playing that thing well. They did a live on Instagram. Hopefully it's love. We'll see.
Oh, I always root for love. So I hope that works out. What an incredible story. And if not, even if it's a friendship, I hope a lot of friendships bloom from this show, because what a wonderful experience that these group of individuals are going through, have gone through.
So next week we get a preview, and we also this week we had the Kim Matina tribute. Next week we have the Boston Rob tribute, where it looks like someone cheated in an excursion.
And I'll be surprised to find out who that is. I have my suspicions, but
who is it? Who do you think?
I mean, I think it's always a candidate of someone who has a background of trying to find ways around things, and that just
Dr. Will.
I mean, I would say you you have to be really wily in these games and find unexpected opportunities to move ahead. And I think of all the players there, Will is an expert at doing that. But I also think Seychelle would be someone who would find an opportunity and exploit that to her advantage. We haven't seen it. It takes a while to probably build your acumen in game wise to be able to pull something off like that. But I think it's a key positive strategy if you could do it and get away with it.
So going into next week, the family is going to be the target for most of the people. We don't entirely know where La Shell stands, but it doesn't seem incredibly likely that she's going to be the person who's going to be in that seat of power. Now, obviously, she could be, because there's a mental component to these challenges, but she's not, so far, the people who've been at the top have been extremely fit people. This past week wasn't a physical challenge.
La Shell could have got it the same way Lete could have got it. I think they had to give each other the best reason on why they should go for it, and so it could have been La Shell, right?
And I don't know if La Shell
1.7. She would have ended up with she wouldn't have won. It was either.
I don't know if La Shell wants that smoke. I think, and that's smart because that's what I would be doing. I wouldn't want to be. I'd be playing a pretty passive game, just trying to get along with everybody. And I don't want blood on my hands early. I think later you maybe make your move. So I'm going to guess that La Shell is not the person who is in that seat of power, who chooses who plays the banker.
Yeah, that'd be in line with
Parvati, David, Dickson are going to be targeted by Lete, Seychelle, Will, and then we'll see where CK ends up. Oh, Phillip, too. Phillip is definitely on that side, I think, at this point. I think Phillip's doing a good job of keeping everyone happy, but we're building this arc. He is in with that group. He's not in with the family. Parvati said there's no room for him in the family, so why would he want to be a part of, playing the game for that group? So I think that's with at least 4 people that are going after the other 3. CK... she could go rogue and go after Will, but I feel like she kind of owes it. She's been good on making these deals and staying true to them. So, yeah.
So the first one wasn't real. Didn't know that.
If we're putting our betting odds, I think Dickson is the most likely person to go out next week because I think he's least likely of those 3 to be. I'd say it's most likely that one of those 4 people or 5 people has the power, and then they can put someone up in position to take out somebody that they want. And of the 3 of the family, I think Dickson is the least likely to preserve himself and win some kind of immunity. Now, obviously, if Parvati were to lose, Parvati's target number 1, David's target number 2, Dickson's target number 3. But if they can't get 1 or 2 out, you're just going to keep weakening them by diminishing their numbers. So my prediction for next week is I think you're either going to see Dickson out or perhaps Parvati or David is in that seat of power, and then they take their shot back at the other alliance. And in that case, who are they targeting?
Yeah, who are they taking out? If that side,
Dr. Will, right?
So,
but they got a lot of enemies. I think probably the person that you might want out is Seychelle or Lete, because it seems like they're kind of the glue of maybe keeping that group together. Because obviously Will and CK aren't directly connected. You need people within that group to kind of keep them, glue guy kind of people. I think Seychelle and Lete are the glue guys in this alliance, and Phillip, although Phillip hasn't taken a shot at anybody. So I think they'd be smart to go after one of those people. I think Dr. Will is probably the most obvious target. And then I think Parvati and David will say, hey, let's have Dickson play the banker, and Dickson, you can go take that shot and you can risk your life. That's what I think will happen if they're in power.
Those are 2 very likely scenarios, but as we all know, this game is absolutely unpredictable, relies so much on chance, and I was absolutely gobsmacked last week when Dickson went rogue and did his thing. And I was surprised how things played out this week. So it's just, every week is more surprising than the last. And I think we're just going to continue to see that. So I can't even fathom.
So lastly, let's just talk about what would have happened, what we think would have happened if Dickson had gone along and taken CK out. Isn't he in a better spot coming into this week? Because I think he's got like a lot of people who want to work with him. CK isn't in the family, so it's not like you need to like preserve CK. Parvati and David, maybe that could have maybe been their opportunity to be like, hey, we kept you safe, like come on and join us type of thing. Maybe they tried that, we didn't see it. But CK is working with the other side. So CK, I think, isn't a number for you. You may as well take her out. In terms of Dickson's game, Parvati and David, I think, are going to keep protecting him. They've got no reason to turn on him or go after him. And then I think he's now got a lot of people who are really wanting to work with him, who are already wanting to work with him, such as Storm. Like they talked about that. He was really shocked by the whole thing because he thought they had a pretty good relationship. Yeah. So I think Dickson could have kind of been a comfortable person that's sort of in the middle, friends with everybody, non-threatening, because he's not physically threatening.
Yeah, but he is, though. Except that's the thing, is that Dickson is a stone cold killer. So whatever he says to you in your face, however he shakes your hand, whatever deal he makes, I think he's being very clear by his gameplay that none of that matters because Dickson's going to do what gets Dickson ahead. So,
but we wouldn't have known that if he had gone with Will. Nobody knows that. They're like, okay, Dickson's,
right.
He could. They said he was trustworthy, he was malleable. Just keep playing that up if I'm him, and then you have an opportunity to make a big move like that later in the game. That's where I think you take your shot.
That might be true. He could have pushed himself ahead another week, but
yeah.
If there's 3 people standing and it's available, Dickson, Parvati, and David, the whole family is free to take a shot at. They're not shooting at Dickson. They're not shooting at Dickson.
He's the last one of the 3.
So I think he can do what he wants. I mean, he's just, as long as both the other members of his family don't end up in a position of being safe by whatever sort of excursion is yet to come. Other than that, nobody. Who's shooting for Dickson? Who's shooting for Dickson? Truly, no.
Well, that's funny you say that because that's the opposite of MG's read on this situation, where she was like, "I'm going to keep David safe." But if David wasn't safe,
except for her, yes,
yeah. So it's the inverse of what Dickson's got. He's actually in a decent spot for the immediate future, so long as those 2 people are exposed. If one of the 2 is exposed, so he's if they lose a challenge, that's a good thing for him. If he's partners with David, he's best off taking that challenge, unless they can get the top case. And then they can dictate who they're going to play. But if they can't, then that's not a bad place for him to be. Right.
And there's so many curveballs that could come in. We haven't seen any red cases in a while. We haven't seen any personal offers. There's a lot of influence that different things can have. But all things being straightforward, which for the past 5 weeks have not been.
I will say I do need to give Dickson some credit here, though, because he did play that Dr. Will thing well in the excursion. And he got Dr. Will. I mean, that was maybe okay. Well, maybe he didn't. Maybe it ended up not being great that Dr. Will was in the bottom. Maybe it would have been. Actually, no. Dickson needs to win that. He needs to stay safe. Like, don't worry about that. Just stay safe. So, Dickson, good job on you in that challenge, and you owned it. And you're just kind of gonna play it. You're playing your own game. So good on you. We'll see how it plays out for you in the future.
Absolutely. Dr. Will said at the beginning of this game, he's been doing this a long time. And when I said that he is going to peg Dickson for the incredible gamer and strategist that he is, he will do it, and he has done it. He knows very well Dickson is highly strategic and a cutthroat killer. Don't let that boyish little grin fool you. Dr. Will is not fooled by that, and neither are we, as we're seeing as listeners. So fun week for us, Jack. This was a great week.
Very fun, great episode. Steph is at Dr._midwife on all social media platforms, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. You're not on Twitter, are you?
I'm not on the Twitter. No.
Okay. Instagram, TikTok, Facebook? No Facebook.
I don't even know how to log into
Okay.
Facebook.
Okay. Instagram and TikTok. She's at Dr._midwife. Anything else, Dr. Midwife?
That's it. Be nice out here, guys. Enjoy the commentary and enjoy the program. We do.
Very good. I'm at Jack Vita Show on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. And actually, I just started up now. I have 2 TikToks. It's at Jack Vita Show for the sports TikTok, and then at Jack Vita Entertainment for reality TV TikTok.
Nice, you guys.
I realize it's similar. It's similar to YouTube, where you want the same kind of content in the algorithm. So if you got sports content, you end up having a bunch of people following you for sports, and you put a reality TV thing in, and it messes up the whole thing because the sports viewers don't end up watching it, and then it brings you down, and then less people see your stuff. So we got a sports TikTok, and we got a reality TV TikTok. You guys can subscribe to the Jack Vita Show. Don't miss my exit interview with the MG. I think she's going to be lovely. I think she's going to be really sweet. I think she'll have a lot of interesting things that she can add that we didn't see in the episode. So really looking forward to having her. It's going to be a fun time. And then we'll be back again next week for episode 6 recap. Until then, I'm Jack Vita. Bring in the dancing lobsters.